All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba, European roots with that Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. How else are you going to enjoy the play-in tournament tonight? You pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba, your local Sedanos, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. And joining us now is our pal, SiriusXM NBA Radio, every afternoon, alongside Eddie Johnson, Justin Termine. Termine, how you doing? Are you ready for the play-in tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. And the Johnny Cubas, I think that's what Eddie drinks, about 5 or 6 of them prior to the show every day, just to, get a little good feeling going. But he might go a little too far because a lot of the stuff he says is really stupid on the program. So I wait till after the show to throw down my Johnny Cuba.
How did you experience the final day Sunday? And specifically the Knicks game against Chicago, I thought was the most fascinating part of the final day of the regular season because you got the Bucks who definitely tried to lose. Doc Rivers is scared to death of the idea of playing Philadelphia in the first round. They tried to lose, and then they had to sit back and watch New York. And New York's MO is like, look, we try to win every game. So now they decided having home court in the second round is more important than avoiding Philadelphia or Miami in the first round. What did you make of that whole situation?
Well, that's the problem we have in the sport right now is you need to reward winning and reward teams that go out there and try. And I think it's BS in both conferences. So Denver now might align with the Lakers here in the first round. That's what it's looking like after Denver busted their rear end all season long. And that Lakers are certainly not the first team they would pick to face, right? Same thing on the final day here in the Eastern Conference. It's like the Knicks go out of their way to try and win. They get rewarded with potentially the Heat or the 76ers, who I think are very dangerous at the back end. Whereas, okay, Milwaukee doesn't try. And again, they've had issues with Indiana all season long. But Indiana, I'd still much rather face than either the Sixers or the Heat. And it's the same thing with like Cleveland gets the Orlando Magic because they threw the fourth quarter of that game the other day instead of maybe lining up with the Heat or the Sixers, which the Knicks, who actually tried and sold the product and did what the NBA wanted, worked hard all season long, and the Knicks might get screwed. Celtics at the top of the Eastern Conference. Hey, your reward for actually taking the regular season seriously and selling the sport as we want teams to do is to face the Sixers and the reigning MVP potentially, who've won 8 consecutive games, or the Miami Heat, who historically you've had issues with. I think at the top, and I've been saying this for a while, as have some others, if you finish with the best record or the second best record, you can pick your first round opponent.
Well, and that's interesting. I've heard that idea floated around. We're also dealing with potentially a really strange scenario tonight because if someone were to say to me, Zaslow, do you think that the Lakers are going to win tonight at the Pelicans? My answer is I have no idea because there seems to be a real possibility that the Lakers may try not to win this game so that they would drop to potentially, it'd be a do or die game on Friday, but then 8th, so they would face Oklahoma City. So it's like they have a New Orleans team tonight who they own, but that would give them Denver, who they will not beat, or they could play a do or die game on Friday, and if they win that, they would face an OKC team that I think a lot of us think they would have a chance against.
I think they would beat Oklahoma City, but I also think they'd be insane to throw the game here tonight. And if they do something like that, they better make sure that it doesn't become public because think about that. Like, the Lakers aren't the Charlotte Hornets. They're a proud organization. And you're going to tell me that the Lakers are going to lose on purpose and then get eliminated in the final game after everybody knows that they lost on purpose? What a black eye that would be for the Los Angeles Lakers. What a smudge that would be on the resume of LeBron James, who needs to protect that as well. Even if they won, you would still have people saying, oh, well, LeBron's afraid of Jokic. LeBron's afraid to face Denver. So I think they got to be very careful on that front. And here's the other aspect of this, because I've heard this conversation and everybody's bringing up the points that I just brought up. What people aren't talking about, though, is the potential that, LeBron, you're talking about, I forgot what the hell I was going to say. Maybe I had the Johnny Cuba prior to the show. I forgot where the hell I was going. But here it is. You want to know where you stand if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, right? So, like, let's say they lose on purpose tonight, then they beat Oklahoma City in the first round. Do they learn anything about themselves long term? But no, if they lose in the first round to Denver and they get smoked, it's like, hey, we need to completely reboot our organization. So I think it's important that they test themselves early. Plus, would you rather face Zaslow Denver early or Denver late? I'd rather do it early when LeBron's still got the fresh legs, when he's got like 4 nights off. If they win today, he can rest. And then there's a lot of days in between the games in the first round, whereas that's not later in the postseason. So if I was the Lakers, I would win tonight and see where the chips may fall.
Good point. How would you sum up this NBA season? If some random person who wasn't following the NBA this year, they saw Justin Termine walking on the other side of the street, they said, yo, that's Justin Termine from SiriusXM NBA Radio. I'm going to ask him about the season. Yo, Termine, was this a good season or not? How would you describe it?
Well, I think the NBA killed it on 2 of the 3 things that they wanted to do. I thought the in-season tournament, and I was reticent to throw my support behind that. I think they nailed that. And the 65 games limit for these awards, I also think was a good thing, because if you look up and down the lineups, a lot of these stars actually did play compared to the last couple of years. The one thing where they failed was the All-Star game, right? So, and I don't really necessarily care about the All-Star game anyway. Even if they were to rectify that, it's not something I would still have interest in. But the NBA had 3 goals here at the beginning of the season. I thought that they nailed 2 of them. One of them, they still came up and failed. And again, that's the one I would have cared the least about anyway. And then in regards to the style of play, like, I really loved the way that we finished out the season with allowing a little bit more physicality and making it harder to score, because I think just like with the home runs there in the late 90s, like, that drew in the average fan, but the hardcore fan didn't necessarily love McGuire and Sosa going back and forth, just because, at least in my opinion, I knew that they were on drugs. And with this, like, I don't love all these like 70-point games or these Hawks Pacers games where everybody's scoring 170 points. Like, I prefer like a little bit of old school basketball. It doesn't need to be full blown 90s, but a happy medium. And I think we found that here the last couple of weeks of the season. So I'm really happy with that as well.
How many years away are we from Wembanyama being a serious MVP candidate?
I mean, maybe 2. I think that second half of the season, you could have made the argument, if he played the whole year like that he's Defensive Player of the Year, that he's an All-NBA guy. And I think by next year, he's All-NBA. After that, you make the argument that he's the best player in the sport, perhaps by year 3. But a lot of it, I think, is going to be relying on what the San Antonio front office does, because they get credit for all this stuff here throughout the course of history. Okay, but a lot of it was the result of tanking. They get David Robinson number 1 overall. They get Tim Duncan number 1 overall. Then they made smart moves, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, etc. But they've done nothing in the last 5 years outside of make a decent DeJounte Murray trade and a horrific Derek White trade. And then this past summer, they said, all right, we got lucky with Wembanyama. Then they did nothing to try and help him. Like, I remember last year, everybody's like, well, Houston's the last place they want to go. It's run like a rec league. And I thought that at the time. I was one of the people saying it. Imagine if he was in Houston right now, it would be a perfect situation. So I think there's a lot of pressure here on Popovich and the front office in San Antonio to say, all right, we're not going to tank again, even though next year's draft is awesome. We got to go out there and get, at the very least, this guy a point guard who can put him in the position to succeed. But a ton of pressure, I think, on San Antonio to now make sure that they're helping to facilitate this guy's greatness.
I think the wildest part of the Wembanyama stuff is this is the worst version of him we're going to see for the next, 15 years, save for the year he eventually decides to retire down the road. This is literally the worst version of him we're going to see.
I agree. And he lived up to the hype because, I always compare him to the guys that I think are the 7 best players in the history of the sport, which is Wilt, Russell, Kareem, Magic, Bird, LeBron, and Jordan. And you could put his numbers up this year. And granted, it's a little bit easier to score today than it was in some past eras. But you put up his numbers compared to everybody else. And he is either on their level or in some cases blowing them away. The one area where he lacks is the wins. Like everybody else was far more successful. And some of that's because certain guys got drafted into really good spots. I mean, Bird's drafted and then immediately plays with Parrish and McHale. Same thing with Magic. He gets drafted. All right, he's playing with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But, you have to make a push here for San Antonio to get this guy some pieces because every other box he checks, it's just not the supporting cast.
So we already spoke about the Lakers and Pelicans tonight. we're all rooting for the Warriors this evening, right? Like we want to either get the Warriors in the postseason or a potential Warriors-Lakers game on Friday night, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fresh blood, so I would say, like, ultimately, like, I'd like to see the Pelicans win tonight and then, make a little bit of a run here. In regards to setting up the best possible play-in game, yeah, it's Steph against LeBron. I think everybody wants that. I was a little disappointed that the Pelicans didn't win the other day, final day of the regular season, so we could have got Durant thrown into the mix there as well. That would have been absolutely awesome. But yes, I would love to see. I think everybody would. Warriors Lakers here for that final spot. So I think, yeah, you got to be a Pelicans fan tonight.
The ramifications of this first round in the Western Conference are pretty wild because you look at the two series that we know are set right now. Either Minnesota or Phoenix are not going to win a series, and either the Clippers, Kawhi, the Mavericks, Luka Doncic are not going to win a playoff series.
I think you can make that argument across the board for both conferences for the series that are set, right? I could see the Pacers beating Milwaukee because there's no Giannis. Yeah, so do I. Like, I would pick that. Cleveland, are they going to be able to score on that defense in Orlando? I understand they're young, but Donovan Mitchell hasn't looked the same the last couple of weeks. And you can, like, they're upping Isaac's minutes. If you've noticed the last two games where he's played like 30 minutes a game. So if they stick Isaac on like Darius Garland and Jalen Suggs on Donovan Mitchell, where the heck is Cleveland going to score? So I think you can make the argument that the Magic can upset the Cavs as the lower seed. The Pacers can do that to the Bucks. And as you mentioned, in the Western Conference, not only do I think that Dallas is, going to win, or can they win? I think they are going to win. And then the Suns are 3-0 against the Timberwolves. So all four series that are set, you could very easily see the lower seed win each and every one of them.
So you think the Timberwolves are going to be done in the first round?
Potentially. I don't really have much confidence in the Suns outside of the fact that Bradley Beal has finally turned it on. And now you got Karl Anthony Towns, who just came back. He's a guy that's always had issues in the postseason. And they're 0-3 against him this year. So I could see that happening for sure.
All right, let's talk about the main event. Of course, that's the Miami Heat. So the Heat and the Sixers tomorrow night. A ton of juice to it, all right? You got Jimmy Butler back in Philadelphia. Jimmy having played there, 5 years ago we're talking about. You got Embiid, the reigning MVP from last year. He's back rested. How healthy he is, we don't know. What do you expect to happen on Wednesday night? And can either one of those teams give Boston a major run?
I would say that Philadelphia's got the better opportunity to give Boston a little bit of a scare just because they're the unknown. So I would have thought if New York was fully healthy, that would have been the second best team in the Eastern Conference. As a result of them not being healthy, I'm going to say Philadelphia just because it's unknown, right? Every other team is known. Like, hey, the Magic, as we just mentioned, are young and they can't score. The Knicks are banged up with Julius Randle. The Cavaliers are heading in the wrong direction. Plus, Donovan Mitchell's got 1 foot out the door. The Bucks have been a mess. No Giannis. The one unknown is kind of Philadelphia. So if Embiid's like fully healthy and Embiid's putting up the numbers from earlier this year, maybe he's fresher because he didn't play a full season. I think that's the most dangerous team. Plus Maxi's emergence. They've won 8 consecutive games. So I think like if Boston had a pick, hey, this is the team we don't want to face. I would say that they'd want to face the Heat before they'd want to face Philadelphia.
The Knicks, incredible season they've had. Number 2 overall, Jalen Brunson, the whole deal. Why doesn't Jalen Brunson get more talk about MVP, you think?
Well, I mean, he's getting it from me. I put him 4th on my ballot. So I just submitted my ballot probably about an hour ago.
So let's hear it. Give it to me.
Yeah. So this is the first place I'm going with it. If we get the podcast up there quick enough before I hit the air at 4:00 Eastern time. So I went with Jokic number 1, Luka number 2, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander number 3. And then I think I don't know if you know my history with JJ Redick. Typically, I don't agree with JJ. I've had some battles with him over like the Bob Cousy stuff and some of his comments in regards to older players. But I saw his MVP ballot. Mine's basically the same. So it's those 3 at the top. Then I have Jalen Brunson 4. I have Tatum 5. I think he reversed Tatum and Brunson. And I have no Giannis on the ballot. And I might sound like a bit of a hypocrite's ass because like 3 weeks ago when that straw poll came out by Tim Bontemps on ESPN, there were like 6 or 7 people that didn't vote for Giannis. I said, how could you not have Giannis on your ballot? Like, how could you? He's one of the 4 guys that needs to be on the ballot along with Jokic, Luka, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I was going off about that. And then as I started to really think about it over the next couple of weeks, I said, all right, well, how am I going to put Giannis Antetokounmpo ahead of Tatum when they were supposed to have the same team at the beginning of the year, right? They're both like, some people pick the Bucks, some people pick the Celtics. And not only did the Celtics finish with a better record, they finished 15 games ahead of them. If there's that drastic of a difference, I got to look somewhere for that. And I got to reward the guy who sacrificed his numbers a little bit. It can't all be about numbers. And I think Giannis has to be held accountable for how messy things got off the court there and some of the personnel and coaching stuff, just as we held LeBron accountable when he's bringing in Russell Westbrook, etc. And then with Jalen Brunson, with far more injuries surrounding him, has a better seed than the Milwaukee Bucks. I got to reward that as well. So I went Brunson and Tatum ahead of Giannis. I understand maybe that's not going to be a popular opinion. Redick is at least one other guy who's gone public saying the same thing, and that's where I sit.
Did you get to vote for every award? Did you have a ballot for everything?
Yes, I did.
All right, let's do it here. Defensive Player of the Year, who'd you go with?
I did. I went with Rudy Gobert. Wembanyama is still a couple of years away. Second half of the year, we had like Brian Windhurst on a couple of days ago, and I agree with what he said. If we just did it based off like the last like month of the season, then Wembanyama is probably getting it. But this is the last time that Rudy Gobert will get it because Wembanyama is coming. That's now 4 times for Gobert. I've actually voted for him 5 times. Best defender on the best defensive team. He gets the nod.
Where did you have Bam?
I had Bam second team All NBA defense. And the reason I did that, he would have been first team. So he's a top 5 defender. Reason I have him second team is because I'm still voting by positions. I hate this idea that the NBA is going positionless. So I think he's one of the 5 best defenders. But I went with my top 3 guys in Defensive Player of the Year voting, which was Gobert, Wemby, and Anthony Davis. And then also on the first team, I had Suggs, Jalen Suggs there from Orlando. And then Alex Caruso. Again, I think Bam is a better defender than those 2 guys, but I'm going by position, so he got bumped down to the second team.
Who got your Coach of the Year vote?
Coach of the Year went to Dagnall. And he might win it, getting every vote like Mike Brown did last year. So that was the most difficult one I feel like that I had to vote on outside of like All NBA. And the reason is I went with Dagnall 1. You get 3 spots there on your ballot. You get 5 for MVP. You get 3 for Coach of the Year. Dagnall, you win the conference with the youngest team ever in the Western Conference. Got to be him. I went with Thibodeau second because Thibodeau doing what he did with all the injuries, finishing second. And then I went with Joe Mazzulla third. And it's a different award, regular season, postseason. I think Mazzulla's under a ton of pressure in the postseason. I do not have much confidence in Joe Mazzulla in that type of spot, but let's be frank. You're going to win 64 games. You're going to have one of the 5 best scoring differentials of all time. You have to give a guy a nod for that. So he got the slight edge for the final spot on my ballot over Jamal Mosley there in Orlando.
All right, top 5, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in order because I'm putting you on the spot here. Top 5 player/coach under the most pressure this postseason. Again, top 5 does not have to be in order.
So I'll throw like almost the Celtics as a whole into the group. So they're definitely on the list, if not at the top. Like I would say team-wise, Boston's under the most pressure. I guess you feel bad putting a little pressure on Embiid, right? Because he's just coming back from the injury. But at some point, he's got to do something. Like it's ultimately like at the end, he's good enough, I guess, to sign up for Team USA this year, as we just found out yesterday, even though he's got a history of being injured. So you can't like next year come back.
Even though he's from Cameroon. How about even though he's from Cameroon?
Yeah, but even that's one point. And then I hate the idea of these older guys, especially with injury issues, going to play for Team USA, especially somebody that's not accomplished anything yet, because he's got to maintain his health for next year. I don't want to hear come postseason time, well, I'm fatigued. It's been a long year. Well, you didn't have to play for Team USA. In the Olympics. So I think he's under a ton of pressure. I would say that, everybody in Milwaukee, Damian Lillard, all right, you're a top 75 player. You wanted out of Portland. You finally got a situation where you can win. So do it, like perform in the postseason, because I thought he was brutal in the regular season. And when Giannis got hurt a couple of years ago, Chris Middleton beat the Hawks twice in the conference finals without him, if you recall, right? Like, hey, no Giannis, I'll get on my shoulders, guys. Got him to the NBA Finals. Giannis comes back. They win. Damian Lillard can't win 2 games against the Pacers here in the first 3 games. Let Giannis rest a little. So I think he's under some pressure, as is Doc Rivers, clearly. Then I'll say, how about Kevin Durant? Like Durant leaves Golden State and, he's supposed to be Steph Curry, supposed to be LeBron James. He's supposed to be one of the top 10 to 12 players of all time. Golden State goes on to win a championship after he leaves, but he's joined all these super teams. You're going to tell me you can't get out of it? And he hasn't been out of the second round since he left Golden State. I'm not asking him to win a championship, but how about definitely getting to the second round and then getting out of the second round for once, especially because you're playing with Booker.
My main thing with Durant, outside of his time with the Warriors, Durant's been in this league for like 13, 14 years. He's been to the NBA Finals one time. Obviously didn't win it. One time. Unless he was playing with the greatest regular season team of all time and Steph Curry, who is one of the greatest players of all time, Durant has taken his team to the finals one time. That's not good enough.
No, 100%, especially to the guys he's compared to. And again, like my argument was always, we don't need to relitigate this, but you could have taken any other all-time great. You could have taken like any top, like, for example, like Jaylen Brown's not an all-time great. He's a borderline all-NBA guy. If you put Jaylen Brown in place of Kevin Durant, they were still winning the championship. They might not have won, 67, 68 games, ran through the postseason, only losing like 1 or 2 games the entire time, but they were still winning the championship. You took Jimmy Butler, you took Jason Tatum, you took Devin Booker, you stuck any of those guys on those teams. They're winning the championship. So it's Durant's got to do, and it's not like Durant's left there and not played with anybody. He's played with good teams. He got swept in the first round a couple of years ago where he shot like 38%. So playing with Kyrie Irving, who's supposed to be the most skilled point guard in the history of Western civilization. So yeah, there's some pressure on Durant.
Termine, I'll let you go with this. All right. If the Miami Heat make another run, and everybody knows you are top Heat hater. If the Miami Heat make another run, what are you going to say?
Well, I'm going to say it's horrible for the sport because I think it is bad for the sport. You got to take the regular season seriously. And if teams that don't take the regular season seriously, 7th, 8th seed, make a deep run, I think that other teams are going to say, all right, what the heck's the point of trying in the regular season? And I don't know, you answer this to me. Is it frustrating? Like, I feel like, shouldn't it be enjoyable to, like, one of the reasons that I would say I love the Knicks and Celtics and watching them is every single night, they're going out there and they're giving you a show. They say they care. Like, is it frustrating that you do, like Philadelphia, hey, they're in 7th because Embiid got hurt. Miami's in 8th because Miami took a cavalier approach to the regular season. You got a star player who Pat Riley seems to have handed the keys to in Jimmy Butler, and Butler sets a tone as like, hey, this doesn't matter until we get to the play. Is it frustrating at all for you and Heat fan?
Yes, the part that's frustrating to me is when we talk about Heat culture, I feel like over these last couple of years, we've regressed to behaving like everybody else. Heat culture used to be, we're above that. The main thing is the main thing. We take a business-like approach to every single game, and we take it super serious. By the way, like the New York Knicks have done this year.
Yeah.
So as far as all the Heat culture stuff, it bothers me because I feel like we're more now on the level of the way everybody else handles things, and I feel like we used to be above that. And the second part is, listen, on the floor, it says Heat culture, toughest, meanest, nastiest, most disliked, most physical team in the NBA. And when we behave this way, where we're sitting guys and we're not putting 4,000% effort, I feel like it's disrespectful to all of that came before this year's team. So that type of stuff matters to me. And so, I find that part frustrating.
Yeah. And so I'll add, because I actually only gave you 4 people under pressure or 4 examples like that. Jimmy Butler. And typically I wouldn't say that like an 8th seed has a guy that's under immense pressure, but if Butler's going to tell us he doesn't care about the regular season and he turns it on in the postseason and he's going to shoot commercials where he just did for, I think it was Hulu, we're saying like, this is when I go nuclear, mother bleepers. Like, all right, well then you can't go into the first round and lose in 5 or 6 games. You got to make another deep run. Like you can't talk like that all year and then fail to back it up. So I would say Butler's another guy that's under some pressure here.
Termine, excellent job. Tell everybody how they can hear you on a daily basis. Go ahead.
They don't want to listen to me, so I'm going to pass on that. No, it's at Termine Radio. You can follow on social media, both Instagram and Twitter. And then you've got me 4 to 7 Eastern time with Eddie Johnson on NBA Radio, SiriusXM NBA Radio.
Great job, Termine. Enjoy the playoffs. Enjoy tonight's games. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Zaz. You too. Go Sixers.